Welcome back, podcast community. My name's Cam King. This is episode number 62. Today, I have my new friend, Daniel Santrella out of Chicago. Daniel, what's going on, man? How are you?
Cam, thanks so much for having me on. This is a blast. It's great to get to know you. I'm doing really well. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing good. Thanks for asking. We just went over the podcast, came up with a few questions, as you know, and as most people listening to this know. Three Questions Podcast is really simple, super straightforward. We have guests on and we discuss three questions of random topics, mostly for people to have takeaways from other people who have been through really interesting things, such as yourself, and are doing very fascinating things to sort of share their wisdom, expertise, knowledge, and further network. So today we've come up with a few questions, but why don't you give people a little bit of an intro about who you are and what you're doing currently?
Yeah, well, thanks for joining us here, wherever you're listening from. My name is Daniel Santrella, and I sort of have a myriad of different pursuits that I actively go after. I'm a voice actor. I've done that in a professional capacity for 10, 15 years. I work in tech and consulting, mostly helping people with user research and experience design. And I am just an absolute and utter gym rat. Very common posting that you'll find on my Instagram or other places that you might find me. So that's just very brief overview of this, and I know we'll get into it next.
Yeah, I love it. I started Three Questions Podcast as a way to answer questions that a lot of my former clients and current clients were having that I could answer in more of a public forum. I felt like I kept sort of hitting on similar things for a lot of people, but I didn't want to start a podcast for my fame. I want to start a podcast to empower and share other people's stories. And I'm always absolutely blown away when I hear what people are doing, which I find fascinating. I find voice acting fascinating. My favorite one, I forget his name, but he was the voice for Batman for so long. You probably know it. The name escapes me
Oh,
right now.
sure. The name will escape me too. I'm really bad with names and stuff like that. It's just like it doesn't enter my zone. It's not my zone
Yeah.
of genius to remember those things. Just the fact that someone's out there doing that blows my mind. Yeah.
Well, I think it's such a fascinating art. Even you take someone like Mark Hamill, who was Luke
Yeah, sure.
Skywalker in Star Wars, and then you're like, oh my God, he's the voice of the Joker in all these crazy
Yeah,
Batman
right.
animated things. And it
Right.
just blows my mind. It's such a talent that I I'm in awe by. So we have a question about that, but as you know, Three Questions Podcast, we start with one question. I'll set my watch on timer for 5 minutes. You don't have to fill up all 5 minutes, but I want to hear your expertise like you're talking to a wide audience. And if that's sharing your story or sharing your point of view on something, nothing is really off limits. Feel free to swear. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll let you know when you're getting close. I'll just hold up a four thing. We
Right.
can make it conversational. And if there's any sort of additional points you want to make after that, feel free to. So,
Love it. Yeah, sounds
sound good to
great.
you?
Yeah, it sounds lovely.
Cool. Well, let's hop into question number one. I'll start my watch. And here we go. So, question number one: how did you get into voice acting? And what does that look like on a daily basis or even during a project?
Yeah, sure. So, um, growing up and even now, my dad has always been in radio, right? And so, when I was a kid, he was selling airtime for lots of different big commercial radio stations. And so he would come home with little scripts that he would doctor up. A big way that he would sell his airtime would be by cutting something and bringing it to a business so that it could sound super authentic. The business would go, "Oh my goodness, like this sounds so professional. What is this?" And he's like, "Yeah, we can get this done for you, and you can buy airtime, on our station." And so he'd come home and I'd run the stopwatch for 60-second spots or 30-second spots or 15 seconds, 90-second spots, whatever it might be. And somewhere in there is when it dawned on me that like this was a real job, that he was going to bring this to someone else who was going to get paid to actually go ahead and stand in front of a microphone and do this. And so I think that's where it got my ear. About 15 years ago was when I started getting my first contracts for actually doing voiceover. And I got lucky sort of out of the gates. I put together some demo reels and, of course, tapped on dad's shoulder to say, hey, look, can you send this to some people who are in the industry? Can I get some really good feedback, make them be critical, etc.? And they were kind and they were critical and they sort of pushed me in all of the directions that I needed to be pushed. And I was able to land some really interesting spots. First big ones with like Lunchables and then Speedway. And the practice of it day to day is I'm on Stewart Talent. So I have a couple agents between New York, LA, Chicago, and Atlanta that all send me auditions on a usually weekly basis. Sometimes a good week is 3, 4 of those a day. Bad week, I might see 3 of them for the entire week, right? And the practice of it is pretty simple. I mean, it's to try to not overthink it, grab a script, do 2, 3 takes in front of you and send it off into the ether and see if you get a response, right? A lot of times you're just mailing that stuff into a black hole. But every once in a while you get lucky and you do get the job. You are the right voice for it. And the practice of that then becomes getting into the room with folks, usually on a Zoom like this. Actually, later today, I'll have 15 people up on this screen who will direct a live session as I go jump into my booth and act as a complete and utter silly goose. I'll be playing a dog for a Knoxville tourism campaign. And so, I don't know. I think, Cam, the long and short of it is that the thing that tickles me about that work is that there are so many other things I do in my life that are so utterly serious. This is one of those places where, like, when I get hired to just be an absolute silly goose, there is nothing more fantastic than that. It just is so much fun every time it works. And it takes a lot of effort to make sure that you get those times that do work because it's so much auditioning and there's so much that happens sort of behind the scenes before you actually get to hit record and then hear yourself on TV or radio or come up on a Spotify ad or whatever it might be.
Yeah, dude, I love that. You hit on a really important point, which is you have to have fun. And if you're
Oh,
not
yeah.
having some sort of fun in your job, like what's the point, man? Life's short. Life is really short. And in my 20s, prior to what I'm doing now, I was a new business director, and I used to take that so seriously. And I look back onto what I'm doing now, which is arguably one of the most serious things.
Mm,
And I have a lot of fun in my job. Like, I love the guys that I work with. I see a lot of guys who take it super, super seriously, but I see like 90%, 90 to 95% of the guys that I'm working with, we do some insanely hard things. And we're just sitting there laughing, having a good time, like
yeah.
sleepless, tired, wet, cold, hungry, all the things. And you got to have fun. You got to
Yeah, I
have fun.
mean, it's just a crucial element to all of this stuff. I don't think there's anything at this point in my life. I'm pretty committed to bringing joy to whatever I do, right? And
Yeah.
it doesn't matter if that's the rigorous, work or if that is, the playfulness of turning on the mic and hitting record. Either of those pursuits will come with an equal amount of joy, from my end. I just won't do it. I don't see the purpose is lost on me if you're not able to sit around with friends like that and laugh or make friends out of those experiences and laugh and just share in life, like all the in-between moments, all of the highs and lows. Like this is what we're here for, man.
Mhm. I so often think of the movie Monsters Inc. for
Oh
some
yeah.
reason, because
Okay.
when you have the ability to laugh, right? The whole purpose of that movie is they're trying to get energy from like scaring
Yeah.
people, and whether it's a take on adrenochrome harvesting or not, who's to say?
Yeah.
However, at the end of the movie, they find out that making kids laugh actually fills things up way faster. It's a much stronger energy. So I
Right.
always think about laughter and having fun as like a really good way to fill your cup up, right? If you're ever stressed or you're down, or you're depressed, I'll just throw on a comedy special or like something funny. And if I'm ever feeling down, I just try to laugh. And you can never not be able to laugh. I think that's what people forget. And so if you have something that like fills your cup up or just you can be a kid again, like that's so fulfilling. So great, great advice on there. Please also, do you have any tips on how to take care of your voice? Because
Oh,
I just
sure.
got
Yeah.
over the flu. So,
Oh, interesting. Yeah. I mean, it's always the basics, right? I think like there's no magic remedy for any of this stuff. Salt water gargles are great. Tea and lemon, even just hot water and lemon, all of that good stuff. Um, yeah, it's funny. It's funny you ask about that. I don't often do a ton to take care of my voice. Uh, and I think most of that comes from just the practice of singing, where I've had to work it so much harder in the past that I don't know, cross my fingers, but those muscles are really, really strong, or those vocal cords are really strong. It doesn't tend to go out on me that often. So I don't know. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it's just fun. But you did touch on something really interesting, because I think one thing there that's just to your point about laughter, as you edit and chop this up later, you put out fun clips or whatever. It's like I think that this, like, if there's one thing that I look in older, wiser people, it's like how many like laugh lines do they have on their face, right? Like anytime I see, I think about like the wrinkles that I want. I want them to be like laugh lines, right? Like those are the ones I would yeah, go for the
To
most. Yeah,
totally agree.
yeah.
Let's hop into question number two
Game
because
on.
love what you're doing now. Question number two would have me asking you, you used to work in tech and consulting,
Yeah.
very serious industry. Obviously, there's a lot of different things. What were some of your favorite things about working in the tech industry and also
Mm,
least favorite things? Because there's so many companies out there now. I know a lot of younger people, even if they're not entrepreneurs or if they're entrepreneurs on the side, most of them are getting jobs at tech companies in sales. Last week, I had a conversation with two people who are like, I can't break into the tech industry. I don't know how. Do you
mm.
have any advice on breaking into the tech industry or what your favorite thing was and what your least favorite thing was about it?
Yeah. So I think I'll take them in that order. So breaking in and favorite and least favorite. Like I think to break in to anything, even if you're going to break into voice acting too, right? It's just talk to people. Like I think there's the art of like communication that is just like lost on a lot of folks, and it's about not being scared, right? Like you're out there in the ether and you're listening to this. Like I didn't know Cam till 10 minutes before we jumped on today, right? It's about taking that leap and just having some faith in yourself and trust in the other person you're going to jump on with to make the most out of whatever that connection can be. uh, Today's case, that's a really interesting podcast and the opportunity to touch a lot of different people that I wouldn't get to touch, and vice versa. I think for Cam, be introduced to my network. And the same goes for that. So if you're trying to jump into the tech field, just talk to folks. It's a really interesting time, and I think in the past I would have way more tactical advice for you, but it's a really interesting time in tech. There's a ton of layoffs going on. It's harder to get into somewhere and feel any sense of stability. And so I think you just need to find good people who are going to help you make those right ends and give you that security that you're looking for, and make your break into that. Um, yeah, and same goes with voice acting too. Just reach out. I think you'll find it in tech and voice acting. The similarities is that some of the nicest people you ever meet are on the inside of those places. And so, favorite things, for sure, the people. Like the biggest takeaway for me in tech uh, is just being able to encourage and watch other people grow inside of an organization, that seeing the things that they're capable of, seeing things that would have scared the crap out of them before that do not scare them, now in much bigger roles. I mean, there's nothing cooler than that, to watch that growth as both someone as a peer and also like as a leader, right? I had 55 direct reports. There were a lot of people who wanted to move up and find ways, and a lot of those people did, and it was really, really inspiring. So that's for sure one of my favorite things. Conversely, I think one of my least favorite things, and this may be like a bygone era at this point, but the personalities, right? There's a lot of really intense personalities in tech and startup culture. And the way that I see this manifest, even now in the work that I do today as a consultant, is that the loudest voice in the room typically wins, right? And I think we're in this era of self-awareness and self-care, and these things are top of mind in the zeitgeist of people. It wasn't true maybe 5, 10 years ago, even thanks to Brene Brown and other pioneers right before them. but we can be aware of what's supposed to be right and getting the quiet people to speak, giving everyone sort of a voice and allowing them whatever form of confidence they need. But I still see a lot of really intimidating personalities who sort of take the spotlight from really meaningful conversations, really meaningful business pivots that could be taken. And so a lot of the practice that I bring whenever I'm leading workshops or just helping lead teams is to find those small voices and make them really loud, right? Because that's just something I think in other places I've seen get lost. And not in a good way, right? I mean, yeah, I guess it's never good when things are lost, but just I see that tendency in a lot of businesses right now.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. I think ego is something that needs to be spoken about in the workplace. Not that I agree with woke culture on everything, because I honestly don't care. I'm super independent, but there's an element of humility and empowerment that just needs to happen across the board at
Yeah.
companies. There are words that just aren't being brought into a corporate workplace. And I used to try and be a hammer, and when I was working with teams, and that was not the right way to do that all the time. And I see in my current job sphere, like, I work in one of the most toxic atmospheres probably in the country, and the leadership and things that I hear and say and see happen make me go, wow, holy shit, I never want to act that way or be like that to another person. And I feel like my job has made me a more humble person when I go to the civilian world, because I'm like, wow, I've seen what really bad toxic leadership looks like, and I
Mm-hmm.
know how to do the complete opposite, right? And I'm a high performer, I'm a high achiever, I'm very individually motivated, so I don't need that sort of hammer type approach, but there are so many better ways to handle that. And I unfortunately see a lot of C-level executives, even clients and former clients that I've had, that they don't really know how to handle these things. And I think that companies need to develop a system of tools or ways to empower that, not to punish
Mm-hmm.
it, but you need to figure out a way to provide people the right tools, because everyone needs different tools at different times. And if someone can figure that out, I think they're going to make a lot of money. So there's $1 million idea for you.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's so the journey is like getting everyone to speak up, right? We know that diversity, we know that different voices at the table create such a better outcomes, like
Yeah.
unquestionably, right? Like objectively. And the art is getting all of those people in in the right place, the right time to speak, right? And
Yes.
that's the hard part. That is truly the art behind all of it. Um, it's something that I really like. I mean, I've worked in super corporate environments before, where there'd be 50 voices on a Zoom call as we're doing a big readout presentation at, Fortune 5 organizations, right?
Yeah.
And it is an ask of patience and confidence and understanding to get words in, even as the consultant, right? Even
Mhm.
as the person who's sitting there going like, you've tasked me to go find out this information, have that information, I want to gift it to you. I also want to understand like who's in this room right now that's not going to raise their hand to challenge some of the assumptions about the research we've just done, or challenge the direction that we're suggesting we take. Why might this not work? Getting those voices out there is just really, really important.
Well, it's difficult when you put everybody in the same room in a
Yeah,
highly pressurized environment, or,
yeah,
100 people on a Zoom call, and it's like, does anyone have anything they want to say? And somebody's sitting there like squirming. How do you
yeah,
empower that person, right? It's almost an impossible task at these big companies that move so quickly with these types of things. So
yeah.
I think you're on the right track thinking about that. That's a very precarious situation for sure. Um, Question number three is my favorite one of these.
Okay, game on. Yeah,
If you're ready, I'm
I'm
dying to
ready.
hear this.
Yeah,
I've been squirming about this question the entire time.
great.
Uh, but you mentioned you went through an extreme life transformation that was shocking. And I think in terms of mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, probably financial, and even academic for your
Mm,
own self. Those are all six pillars that I work on specifically with my clients. But I think that is putting all of those to the max of your transformation. Do you want to talk about that and share that story about what that was like in those ways?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, man. So 10 years ago, I was like, I'll give the honest answer to this. Like 10 years ago, I clocked in at 313 pounds. I remember the number on the scale because it just wrecked me, right? It was one of those moments where it's like, I've been avoiding this for so long, and avoiding the scale for so long that to actually sort of quantify the bad behaviors, the bad, habits I had was really, really, really hard. Right. And I wish that's where it ended. I wish it was like I saw that number and then I was like, forget it. I'm going to change my life right now. I saw that number and I spiraled out of control for the next absolutely at least 6 months. Right. Totally like lost my mind, kind of couldn't believe it, etc. Um, Sometime like right after that is when I sort of fessed up to the fact that like I needed to change. No one was going to change this for me. Like there was no boat coming. I just had to make small decisions to start to change this. And I use the word small because I think oftentimes on the other side of these journeys, we see the outcome, right? And so the outcome for me is that I lost half of my body weight. I lost like 165 pounds, and have maintained it, right? Which is arguably the harder part, is I've kept it off and um, completely changed my habits. Everything in my fridge looks totally different than it did 10 years ago. Everything in my, pantry, etc. But the reason that I hone in on small is because we think about making these gigantic sweeping changes. And when we talk about true transformation and true behavioral change, this starts with really small habits, stupid small habits, like stop drinking soda pop, walk a little further, take the stairs when they're available. And not just like once, like every time. Like not like pat yourself on the back when you didn't have, a dozen sodas for a week. This is like, no, you're gonna have to sustain that effort, right? It's not eating the full Chipotle burrito and bag of chips and guac in like one sitting. It's like those kinds of really small changes. Lots of smalls make a big, right? And so all I did for a very long time was just add small after small after small. So it was like walking more. It was actually actively going to the gym and just doing some really light exercises, just doing some rows on the rowing machines there, walking on the treadmill, eventually graduating to running on the treadmill and increasing sort of physical activities. But an absolute wild reckoning for my whole being, right? A completely different person than I was then. Confidence completely, changed. I don't even know if I had a lack of confidence back then, or I just didn't know where it existed inside of me. And yeah, I mean, to your point, I mean, just sweeping immense change. And I'd love to just let you interject with any question or anything, because I never know which direction to take this. There's so many ways.
Well, I mean, this is your personal transformation journey, and one of the principles that I went through myself was no one's coming to save me. And you just talked
Yeah.
about that yourself. I tell my clients that when they're trying to make changes, either personally or professionally. And I always believe that I don't know if you've ever heard of the pain and pleasure principle, but people will do everything they can to avoid pain, and they will do everything they can to seek out pleasure. And until you start to understand the dynamics of this, you really don't know that people don't make changes until they're sick and tired of being sick and tired. And it sounds like you got to a point where you're like, okay, enough is enough. Right?
Yeah.
And we all drift in life. There's a great book called Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill that went unpublished for a
Cool.
long time. And that he talks about this thing of drifting and how essentially you have to get to a point of saying, hey, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. I'm not going to drift anymore. And you sort of course correct. And that's when your routines and your habits get established. It's not so much discipline and motivation, but you finally got to a point where you said, I'm not going to allow this to happen. And you started slowly changing your routines and your habits. Most people on January 1st or 2nd, what do?
Yeah.
They go to the gym for 3 hours
Yeah.
and then they go for a week or two and then they slowly stop not going. You instead went, hey, I'm going to go and do this. I'm stopping this, no more of this. And you started making the changes that slowly got you back on track, which is the way to go. That's patience, that's
Yeah.
time, and that's effort. What would you say? Would you agree that discipline and motivation don't really exist, that it's more so routine and habits? Or how would you sort of convey that to the audience?
Yeah. I mean, I think that discipline, I think I have this written somewhere. I think discipline eats motivation for breakfast, right? And in other words, like you discipline is really powerful, and routine and habits are definitely part of that. And I think that I don't want to say this in a concise way. Like for me in my life, action has always led to inspiration and never the other way around, right? So do the thing, and then you will find out that you are inspired to keep doing the thing. Don't wait for this like aha moment to change everything, right? Because it's not, it doesn't work like that. It's not going to really come. So just start doing the thing, and then you will find yourself inspired to do the thing. And that inspiration, friends, is going to wear off, right? Unfortunately, uh, there's very limited returns on how often you can stay inspired. There's not once you start to bring in discipline, right? And that's where you get into your routines and your habits and you create those things so that you can rely safely on all of these disciplines that you've been able to sustain. And sometimes you're inspired to continue those things, and sometimes you're not. But hopefully, you're disciplined enough and you recognize that change is important enough to just keep going, keep taking that action. And it's hard. I
I
mean, look, I tried everything under the sun to fix this problem for myself before eventually I realized there wasn't a quick hack that I was going to take to fix this stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it was at that point that I realized, like, oh, this is just going to take a while. Like, if I really want to do this and I want to sustain this, it's just going to take a really long time. So, what is that? How do I get comfortable with that?
you mentioned you mentioned how long that journey took you. I want to ask you, what
Yeah.
was more satisfying looking back?
Mm.
The end result, of hitting 160, 165 pounds, or was it the journey? What was the better experience?
Oh no, yeah. I mean, I think you know the answer to this. It's just for sure the journey, right? I mean, like there's absolute
Yeah.
moments of just total and utter jaw-dropping joy, right? When
Mhm.
you get on that scale and you've seen it such a drastic difference. It quantifies sort of the journey in a remarkable way. But the journey itself, I wouldn't trade that for the world. I mean, like I think I would have been an egotistical prick if I'd have been like super slim and cut for my whole life
Yeah.
because it's just a level of confidence I'd never had. It's a level of authority I'd never like taken in my own life before, right? So
Mhm.
that journey is remarkable, and the thing that I'm most inspired to just bring to other people, to talk about with other people, especially people who are contemplating what that journey might look like for them.
And to tell and show people that it's possible,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. To be a living example of that, I think has been a really unexpected and important part of who I am, and why I spend as often as I can at the gym. Yeah.
That's great, man. What kind of workouts are you doing these days?
All calisthenics and interval based training, stuff like that. Old school strongman stuff, without barbells, with like kettlebells and stuff like that.
Yep.
Yeah, kettlebells and dumbbells and push-ups and pull-ups and all of that, good stuff. Levelers, you're in the military, all the weird pull-up tricks I can do. I'm doing that every day.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's the quickest and fastest way to your exact phenotype. And your
Oh, cool.
phenotype
Yeah.
is your genetic body type, which programs that. So running in calisthenics will get you looking like your exact phenotype. Everyone tries to get supplements and eat all these different things and tries to change their genetic body type, which is almost damn near impossible. Obviously, you can do it with guys like Arnold, but he has that exact phenotype to be able to have looked like that at some point. But I think that you want to talk about longevity, all the calisthenic stuff that you're doing, 110% the way to go. So kudos to you, man. Daniel, do you want to let people know how to reach out to you, how to
Yeah.
connect with you?
Yeah, happy to. So yeah, you can find me if you want to pick my brain about voiceover stuff, head to realnicevoice.com. That is me. You'll find me there. If you want to pick my brain about consulting stuff, other stuff, go to veryhuman.cx. That will redirect you to my LinkedIn page where you can shoot me a message. And if you're out there and you're on Instagram, I'm /connect with Daniel, one word. Love to connect with you. People is my energy source, so please don't hesitate to reach out. I really mean that.
Yeah, of course, man. We're getting more listens obviously on the podcast, and when I do push it out, I'm trying to get it on more channels right now. But I will send you the recording of this when it goes up on YouTube. Feel free to share it and clip it as you want. I'll post it on LinkedIn as well once I do get to editing more of these. I have a couple to edit this afternoon. But please send me a follow-up email with all of the info so that I can just put that in the description as soon as possible and share away. And I really want to say thanks for helping on the podcast. And I can tell you're a radiator, not a drain. And I love people like that, especially with the energy. So I hope you have a great morning and rest of your day in Chicago, Daniel.
Cam, I can't thank you enough. This was just an absolute amazing way to start the day. And it's been a real pleasure getting to know you and speak with you. So thank you for your time and your light. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Anytime. We'll connect soon. We'll get you on. Reach out anytime you want. Okay, bud?
Yeah. Take good care. See you later.
All right. See you.